Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. I am your host, Sean Kneese, and I know I've been on a bit of a hiatus for a while. Life happens. But on this show, we have off-the-cuff and candid conversations about the big topics in the world. And I hope you're all having a good start to May. It's the middle of the year, almost the middle of the year already. But for this episode, I know some episodes I have a guest, some it's just me talking. This is just me talking this episode. And I wanted to talk about how focusing on yourself and a lot of this self-help stuff, it has its place, and also liking yourself and accepting yourself has its place. And I've talked about some of that on the show as well as a wide range of other topics. But I wanted to talk about, because it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I wanted to talk about the other side of that, the other what's not too good about that, because I think some of that becomes selfish, and I think a lot of that is a reflection of our narcissistic and selfish age that we live in. And I think that when people sometimes put focus on yourself to mean that then you neglect everybody else, that then you don't care about anybody else. And I think you do owe other people. Like, other people matter too. And I wanted to talk about that. And related to that, there's this whole idea of, if people don't like you, that's their problem. And, if, they didn't appreciate you, they didn't make time for you, they, like these memes I see, and this kind of content I see that's all about, they didn't appreciate your greatness, that's why they don't like you, they didn't. But sometimes there's legitimate reasons why people don't like you. Sometimes you got to look at your own role in a conflict, it's the other person's perspective is valid. If you have a falling out with someone, or you have a different if you have a misunderstanding with someone, or like fights in a relationship, like, you got to look at the other person's perspective too. It's not just you. And sometimes when people don't like you, it's because there's really shitty parts of your personality you got to work on. There's things that you're doing that are inconsiderate. It's not just they don't recognize your fucking greatness. Like, that's such a narcissistic way to look at things. But I guess if you relate that to, I want these people to think I'm cool. Like, if you're being completely considerate, I mean, that's high school shit, but high school never really ends for a lot of people. But, like, if you're, I guess the context where it would work is, like, if somebody's afraid to put themselves out there as an artist, and they really like the music they do, but they're afraid people are gonna hate it, but they have something important to say, then say that shit, It doesn't mean you couldn't then get, like, constructive feedback and you can take it or leave it if it doesn't, whether it fits your vision or not. But that's a valid thing of, like, not caring there, or, staying true to yourself and your values, standing your ground, setting boundaries. Like, if people don't respect that, then yes, that is on them. That's when you should be like, okay, I don't need to please these people. And I've talked about getting over people pleasing and everything, but now I want to talk about, like, the other extreme. I want to talk about when it's too much, like, this is who I am, screw everybody else. So I just want to give credit where credit is due, and I just want to say I got the idea for this episode partially from this video I saw on TikTok, and it was something I wanted to say for a while, and I kind of said it before on the podcast, but it's from Dora the Explorer. I'm just saying that's her username. It's DORATHEEXPLOR and then HOE. Anyway, let me play what she said in that video.
Maybe this is a hot take, I don't really know or care, but I'm really sick of this new mentality that people have where, you don't owe anyone anything. Because, yeah, you do. Yes, you do. You owe your loved ones, your friends, your family, your significant other, etc. You do owe them something. You owe them your time and your energy. And you should want to go out of your way for your loved ones. So you can have a balance between being selfish and selfless, but I fear a lot of you don't know how to be selfless anymore. And I think it's a problem. So, sorry, you do owe people something. You do owe your loved ones something. Okay, love you, bye.
So yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying already, you know. And life isn't just about what you can get, it's also what you can give, and what you give comes back. So I think that a balance of selflessness and selfishness is important. You know, you can't be too putting everyone else's needs first, and neglecting your own, but at the same time, you know, helping a friend or family member out of a tight situation, or doing something for them that may be inconvenient to you at a time. I think sometimes you do need to do something like that. Like I feel like sometimes you should go out of your way for people, and then hopefully they'll go out of their way for you in return. But I think what she's saying is very valid. And you know, there's a fine line between self-care and selfishness. While focusing on oneself is essential, an overemphasis can sometimes lead to neglecting others' feelings and needs. So let's explore other ways this manifests, particularly through behaviors like ghosting, certain interpretations of spirituality, and the pitfalls of some motivational advice. And actually, when I was just thinking about how rewarding giving can be, it's interesting. Tony Robbins actually is someone who's talked about that, like what you give, like how rewarding giving can be. And I think I remember in one book I read of his that he talked about how when like he had no money in his bank account, he gave his last dollars to somebody who needed it to help someone, and then that was rewarding, and then everything ended up coming back to him. Or he talked about I think it was like giving turkeys to people on Thanksgiving that didn't have it. He was talking about like the reward. So at least he does talk about that, because like some other self-help people get really about being selfish, and sometimes when they talk about confidence, they don't differentiate between just like arrogance, narcissism, and confidence, and like not caring what people think and just being inconsiderate to others. Like one of the advice was to stand in line longer than necessary and pick out what you want, even if people get irritated. I mean, that's just inconsiderate and being an asshole. And also how it's always punching down, like pretty much bullying the waiter, or like asserting yourself to the waiter, punching down rather than punching up. And I don't like that either. I think there's better ways to practice assertiveness than being inconsiderate or punching down. But that's just me. Okay, so I want to talk about ghosting, the act of abruptly ending communication without explanation. It's become increasingly common, especially in the digital age. A study published in Calabria Psychology found that individuals who were ghosted experienced greater distress and negative emotions compared to those who ended relationships through direct conversations. The sudden silence leaves recipients grappling with confusion, hurt, and a diminished sense of self-worth. Moreover, research highlighted by Very Well Mind indicates that ghosting can threaten fundamental human needs, including the need for control, understanding, and belonging. The ambiguity and lack of closure can lead to feelings of helplessness and loneliness, underscoring the importance of clear and compassionate communication when ending relationships. And this isn't ghosting, but I just want to give an example without going into details. There was someone in my life who really betrayed me in a way that messed me up for a long time. I don't want to go into details. This person knew my vulnerabilities, they earned my trust, and then one day they did something completely unexpected, something that deeply hurt me and left a lasting impact. What made it worse is that it didn't have to go that way. But instead she chose to betray my trust in a way that felt cruel and unnecessary. And I'll never forget what she said to me in that moment. She said, "I need this." Like my pain didn't matter, like the damage she was doing didn't count because she needed it. And she was probably viewing that as, oh, I'm putting myself first, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, you can't just fuck people over. You can't just hurt people. Like, your actions affect other people. Yes, put yourself first sometimes, but you can't just hurt other people in the process, especially if there's another way, like, of communicating it in a better way where you don't, betray or hurt the person. And the truth is, it wasn't something she needed. It was an extreme choice she didn't have to make. And it reminds me of Andor. I won't spoil anything, but there are two moments in the show where a character is deeply traumatized by something another character did. And when they come face to face again later, this was in two different cases throughout the series, the person who caused all the pain doesn't even recognize them. It's like they were a footnote in the story. For the person who was hurt, it changed everything. It also makes me think of that as scene in Avengers Endgame when Scarlet Witch says to Thanos, "You took everything from me," and he responds, "I don't even know who you are." That line hits hard because it shows how sometimes we hurt people and then we forget they even exist. We don't realize the lasting impact we've made or how deeply we've affected them. That's what I think about when it comes to how we treat people, especially online. We don't always see who we're affecting. We don't always realize the weight our actions carry, and sometimes we justify what we do by saying, "I needed this," without considering who we might be breaking in the process. So as I said, it's important to like yourself, to stop begging for approval, to not constantly shrink who you are to fit someone else's idea of acceptable. But at some point, that message of just be yourself, or if someone doesn't like you, that's on them, gets warped. It turns into this detached mindset of, if they don't like me, fuck them. And suddenly it's no longer about self-respect. It becomes arrogance or apathy or just plain avoidance of responsibility. There's a difference between being confident and being careless. Because yeah, there are people out there who won't get you, who will judge you for the wrong reasons, who will project their own shit onto you. But that doesn't mean you're blameless. Always. Sometimes the way we act, the way we communicate, or the way we shut down, or the way we blow people off, has real consequences. And if we don't stop to look at it, we end up hurting people in ways we don't even realize. We push people away and then we say, they weren't my people. But were they really not your people? Or did you do something that made them stop trying? Self-awareness isn't about self-loathing. It's not about walking around thinking you're broken or toxic. It's just about being honest enough to say, yeah, I like who I am, but I also know I have edges that cut people sometimes. And it's possible to soften those edges without losing yourself, without becoming fake. You can still be authentic, still stand up for yourself, still be unapologetically you, but with the emotional intelligence to say, hey, maybe I handled that poorly. You can have integrity and humility at the same time. And honestly, if you think about it, that's what real confidence looks like. Not the performative kind where you act like nothing ever bothers you or nobody's opinion matters, but the kind where you're so grounded in who you are, you can actually take feedback without crumbling. You can look at your own patterns and say, I want deeper relationships. I want to connect, and if I've got behaviors that are getting in the way of that, I'm open to working on them. Because this whole thing of writing everyone off the second there's conflict, that's not strength, that's fear. That's avoidance dressed up as empowerment. Growth isn't about changing your personality, it's about leveling up your awareness. Knowing when something is a clash of values and when you might have actually done some damage. The truth is we all have blind spots. We all have moments where we snap, where we shut down, where we make it harder for people to love us, and if we never look at those moments, if we keep just telling ourselves it's always the other person's fault, we're not growing. We're just staying safe, and safe doesn't lead to connection. Safe leads to loneliness. You can still be you. Just be a version of yourself that knows how to care, that knows how to pause, that knows how to look back at a situation and ask, did I handle that the way I wish someone would have handled it with me? That's not weakness. That's strength most people never touch. And I saw this meme not too long ago. It said, check yourself. Sometimes you are the toxic person. Sometimes you are the mean, negative person you're looking to push away. Sometimes the problem is you. And that doesn't make you less worthy. Keep on growing, keep on checking yourself, keep on motivating yourself. Mistakes are opportunities. Look at them, own them, grow for them, and move on. Do better, be better. You're human, and it's okay. And I think that's very important too, because you always hear this shit about toxic people, toxic. But okay, it's easy to point the finger at other people, right? It's easy to say they do this, but it's like the one you can really change is you. So how do you know you're not being toxic in some ways? If you never think about it, if you never look at it, if you just think that's their problem, that's their problem, it's not me, it's not me. You know, if you never look at yourself, how would you know? And I think what gets missed a lot is that being considerate doesn't mean being submissive. It doesn't mean bending over backwards for everyone's opinion. It doesn't mean filtering every word through a people-pleasing lens. It just means being aware. It means understanding that the way you carry yourself affects the people around you. That your presence has weight. That your words land. And yeah, there's a line. You don't want to live your life walking on eggshells. But the answer isn't swinging to the other extreme either, where you're bulldozed through people, act like nothing's ever your fault, and call it being real. That's not authenticity, that's just being emotionally lazy. The hardest balance to strike is this: holding space for who you are and how others experience you. Because sometimes we weaponize self-love. We use it to justify not listening. We tell ourselves, I'm not going to change for anybody. And we say it like it's noble, like it's strength. But honestly, sometimes it's just ego. Sometimes it's just a defense mechanism we built after being misunderstood too many times. We swing so hard into independence that we forget relationships require mutual effort. They require repair. They require reflection. You can't have real intimacy if you're unwilling to look at your own impact. You can love yourself and admit you messed up. You can be proud of who you are and recognize the growth is ongoing. Those things don't cancel each other out. That's what it means to be mature, to say, I still value myself, but I also care enough to ask what part I played. That's not weakness, that's strength, that's depth, that's how you keep people. That's how you deserve to keep people. Because what people remember more than your confidence or your vibe or your opinions is how you make them feel. And if someone walked away from you feeling dismissed, devalued, disrespected, even if you didn't mean to, it's worth looking at. Not because you're a bad person, but because you care. It's not about guilt, it's about growth. And growth doesn't mean changing who you are at the core. It just means sharpening your awareness, understanding your patterns, noticing the way your tone, your silence, your jokes, your defensiveness, all of that can land differently if you intend it. And if you're serious about connection, about building something real with people, then that awareness matters. It's easy to say, they weren't for me. It's harder but more honest to ask, was I even showing up as someone worth staying for? And if you can answer both these questions with clarity, that's how you start creating real, lasting relationships. Not surface level ones where everyone just tolerates each other, but ones with depth, with truth, with accountability, with actual connection. That's what we all want in the end. Connection that's built on truth, not performance. And you can't get that unless you're willing to meet people halfway, without losing yourself on the way there. And there's also this deeper layer to all of it. This tension between individualism and community. We live in a culture that worships independence, hustle, self-reliance, the grind set. We're told over and over again to look inward, to fix ourselves, to be our own saviors. And sure, there's value in that. Self-help has its place. Learning to regulate your emotions, to heal your wounds, to build confidence. Those are powerful things. But there's a shadow side to it too. Because if you take it too far, self-help becomes a form of isolation. It becomes a justification for checking out emotionally, for saying, well, that's their problem, not mine. It becomes a bubble where everything is about your boundaries, your goals, your self-worth, until you forget that other people are living, breathing human beings with their own needs, their own path, and their own stories. When you disconnect self-growth from empathy, you end up with narcissism dressed up in self-care. That's what we're seeing a lot of right now. You got influencers selling healing as a product. Gurus telling people to cut off anyone who doesn't vibe high enough. This idea that if someone challenges you or makes you uncomfortable, they must be toxic. That's not growth, that's avoidance. At some point you have to ask, am I growing into a better version of myself, or am I just a more self-centered one? Because community matters. Relationships matter. The world around you matters. You're not meant to live in a vacuum where you're just the main character and everyone else is just background noise. And let's be honest, greed is the religion of the moment. You can dress it up however you want, but in a time where selfishness is applauded, where billionaires treat empathy like it's a flaw. I mean, Elon Musk literally said empathy is weakness recently on Joe Rogan's podcast, and the scary part, a lot of people agreed with him. That's how far we drifted from our humanity. But empathy isn't weakness, it's a glue that holds society together. It's what keeps us from being cold, transactional, and empty. Without it, everything starts to rot. Friendships, communities, even whole nations. Because if everyone's just out for themselves, nothing real can grow. So yeah, work on yourself, heal, level up. But don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Your growth shouldn't come at the expense of connection. Your self-worth doesn't have to mean stepping on everyone else's. You don't have to choose between loving yourself and loving others. Real growth, mature growth, includes both. You can be strong and soft, independent and interdependent. You can want better for yourself and show up for the people around you. Because in the end, the real flex isn't how much you can do alone, it's how well you can live in a world with others, without losing yourself and without losing your heart. And that ties right into this growing wave of new age spirituality that honestly can be just as self-centered as the hustle culture it's trying to replace. There's this version of spirituality going around now that says things like, just protect your energy, don't get involved, detach from the outcome, everything happens for a reason. It's all love and light till someone brings up real world suffering. Then suddenly it's, well, that's not my vibration. Let's, or they say if there's something horrible going on in the news that actually we could do something about, or we could say, like, it's just, oh, look away from it because there's nothing you can do about it. Just focus on your vibe, your vibration. And that kind of contradicts everything the Buddha was all about. Buddha was all about, because he became enlightened when he became aware of suffering and of death, of old age. And that was the whole point, that he became aware of those things. And then that's when he reached enlightenment. Because how do you have any compassion or empathy and if you're just looking away from what's wrong in the world? Like, looking away just makes it grow more, I think. I think understanding it and knowing how and figuring out how we fix it, like, that's how we make the world better. I think it's because too many people want to look away when they have the privilege to look away. That's why injustices and horrible things in the world are allowed to just continue. So true spirituality is not meditating in your room and cleansing your aura. It's about compassion. It's about responsibility. It's about showing up for the suffering of others. Not just turning away because it's too heavy or doesn't serve your path. You can absolutely make a difference. We all can. Even if it's just speaking out, donating, raising awareness, offering support to someone grieving, choosing to care instead of tuning out. Because numbness isn't enlightenment. Apathy isn't peace, and pretending you're above it all doesn't make you spiritual. It just makes you disconnected. The whole point of awakening, of becoming more conscious, is to become more loving, more aware, more connected to the world around you, not less. It's about expanding your capacity to care, not shrinking it behind some Fox spiritual wall of detachment. So no, don't let anyone tell you you can't do anything. Don't let anyone convince you the only path is inward. Yes, healing yourself is important, but yes, personal peace matters, but real growth, real awakening, real spirituality is about taking that peace and bringing it to the world. As Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world, being a force for something better. Because if your spiritual practice ends with you, then it's not real. The people who've made the biggest impact spiritually, morally, historically, they didn't just sit back and say, it's not my problem. They showed up. They acted. They loved. They fought for others. That's what makes a soul powerful. Not how calm you can stay when the world burns, but how much light you can carry into the fire. I'm thinking of a quote from, I believe it was Batman Begins, I believe, yeah. And there's the one character, Katie Holmes' character. She says to Bruce Wayne, you may be a good guy underneath, but it's not what you do. It's not what you say that defines you. It's what you do that defines you. So when people are taking you the wrong way or you're turning people off, sometimes it could be that you're not really showing your true self. Sometimes, as much as you have to offer on the inside, you could be doing things that, especially if you're someone who has some work to do with like social skills and stuff like that. Sometimes you could be, your body language or the way you communicate can make you come off the wrong way to people who could otherwise be your friend or people you have a connection with. It's just that they're not seeing the real you. Just thinking, and it's good to learn some things about like how you're coming across. You know, I could have the best intentions in the world, but if I'm constantly messaging some woman I'm interested in and she's like, her replies are shorter than mine, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, as good as my intentions are, it comes off the wrong way if I keep messaging this person, you know, regardless of how good my intentions are. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that even this person isn't someone I could connect with if I just chilled the fuck out and took things slow and was laid back. It's just like I'm pushing them all at once, you know. It's or if you go to a job interview, you might not be showing them everything you have to offer, you know, because you don't know how to communicate or sell yourself. A lot of it's the presentation. Sometimes the presentation, way you present yourself, doesn't accurately show people everything you have to offer. So I think that rather than just being like, oh, they didn't like you because of this and that, maybe there's things you could work on that could help you come across better. That's not changing who you are. That's just improving the presentation. Or on a date, like I could have somebody in common with a woman I'm on a date with, that we could have a lot of things in common. But if my communication skills, like if I'm just sitting there, like talking like, yeah, that's like something I'd fall into a lot, is just going like, yeah, like talk quiet, like all of a sudden, like I'd be very expressive on the phone when I talk to them, but then when we meet up, it'd be like, yeah, that's good, and give like kind of quick answers, and the conversation wasn't always as natural, and I, you know, smiling and eye contact, stuff like that, you know, even though, like, and it made me come across in a different way than I was, and that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, this person just wasn't right. Like, it just, the impression of you, they weren't able to see who you really are because of like the way you were presenting yourself, you know. And just having people, I kind of want people in my life that hold me to a higher standard, you know, and I kind of want to be with someone that holds me to a higher standard. You know, if I was just a lazy fuck and sat around, stopped going to the gym, and just like smoked weed and played video games all day. I mean, not that there's anything with smoking weed, as long as it doesn't become your whole life and keep you from doing other things. Then I'm sure, you know, I could find some other person that just wants to do that, or people that just want to do that, and they'd like me for who I was. But like, is that really a good thing to be? Like, I mean, I would aspire to more than that. Like, if I improve myself, I go to the gym, I try to work more towards my goals. Is that changing who I am, or is that just improving who I am? You know, I want to hold myself to a higher standard, so I'd rather be with someone with standards, you know, like it's holding me to a higher standard than just, oh yeah, that's just who Sean is, let's have him stay who he is. And a couple other points I wanted to make. So I also want to take a moment to reference an article I came across from The Independent by Danielle Jones titled, Have We Become More Selfish in a Post-COVID World? And obviously most of you, I'm sure, remember COVID vividly. Wherever you were or whatever you were doing at that time, it affected all of us. That was one time that an event affected everybody in the world, like in one way or another, I'd say. Well, maybe not everybody. Maybe if it was like someone off the grid, not necessarily, but, or in like some isolated civilization or something like that. But I mean, that's overthinking. By and large, it affected most people that would be listening to this podcast. And honestly, this article hits hard. It talks about how during the height of the pandemic, there was a strange movement of unity, of shared struggle and connection. We clapped for health workers, we joined Zoom hangouts, we supported frontline staff, and we checked in on each other. There was this fleeting sense that maybe, just maybe, we were all learning to slow down, appreciate each other more, and move forward in a more compassionate direction. But according to the article, and I agree, we've kind of lost that. As soon as the pandemic let up, the war in Ukraine hit, and then came the cost of living crisis. It was already bad before that, but it got worse. We went from one trauma to the next, and now, as Danielle puts it, we're all in this prolonged state of fight or flight, and instead of banding together like before, many people are retreating into themselves. The compassion fatigue is real, and the fear is real, and with fear often comes selfishness. The article also points out how we're dealing with a collective social burnout. People are on edge, strangers are more rude, friendships are falling apart, and the we're in this together energy is faded into this low-grade, every person for themselves mentality. It's not because people are evil, it's because they're exhausted. But that doesn't mean it's okay. It means we have to fight harder to choose empathy, to still show up, to still give a damn. Danielle's article ends on a bittersweet truth. Maybe we have become more selfish in a post-COVID world. But the real question is, are we okay with that? Or are we willing to fight for something better? Are we willing to reclaim that sense of shared humanity we almost had before fear convinced us to let it go? Because that's what it comes down to, choosing connection over convenience, compassion over comfort, people over pride. And also, in this BBC article, has social media made young people more selfish? Because, there is that thing with social media, the me, and just like the present. But a lot of that is narcissism, but a lot of that is also self-loathing, because you feel like, oh, you got to share this and that and present yourself in a way, because who you really are isn't enough. So you got to impress, you got to show this. So in the BBC article, has social media made young people more selfish? Reporter Declan Harvey explores whether platforms like Instagram and Twitter fueled a rise in individualism among young adults. Dr. Bernie Hogan of Oxford University Internet Institute argues that while social media appears to connect people, it often reinforces a peer-to-peer model rather than fostering a sense of collective identity. Instead of joining broader communities or causes, users mostly interact one-on-one, forming networks rather than cohesive groups. Hogan suggests that this shift in how people relate online leads to a more networked mindset rather than a communal one. While content is often labeled as shared, it is usually more about self-promotion, projecting a curated image rather than contributing to something bigger. This aligns with findings presented in the BBC Radio 4 documentary, Generation Right, which claims that those aged 18 to 30 are more individualistic than previous generations, showing less support for social safety nets like the NHS and the welfare system. Surveys referenced in the documentary suggest this generation values, it's not my generation, it's the youngsters. I still consider myself a young, even though everybody my fucking age likes to complain about being old. I still consider myself young. I'm 36, but so I think this is talking more about like Gen Z and even younger. But this suggests this generation values personal responsibility and expects the same from others. Some critics have called young people selfish brats, focused more on consumerism than community. I don't know, man. I think boomers can be pretty selfish. It's like the older generations always try to act like they're so much fucking better, and it's like, no. I think there's selfish people and there's selfless people, no matter the age group. So I consider this a little ageist, to be honest. But these are just like some notes I gathered from the article. However, others argue that this mindset may be a response to policies that have offered them less, like tuition fees and benefit cuts, leading them to feel they must fend for themselves. So ultimately, the piece raises the question of whether social media is shaping a more self-centered generation or simply reflecting a wider social shift already underway. I don't know, man. I don't think it's just this generation. Look at our president. He's pretty damn narcissistic. It's all about like him and him. But I don't know, man. But that's some food for thought. I'll post links to these articles too. So, to bring all of this together, yes, self-growth matters. Healing matters. Becoming comfortable in your own skin, learning to love yourself without needing constant validation, that's powerful. But it's not the whole picture. It's not the finish line. Because the point of becoming whole isn't just so you can sit in your wholeness alone. It's so you can show up better in your relationships, in your community, and in the world. And that's why I never understood these people who are just like, I'm going to retreat into nature and just be enlightened and then isolate myself. So what good is that? You're not in the world where helping different kinds of people. You're not in the world where you can actually use your compassion. You're just sitting in the fucking forest acting like you're better than everybody. Like, oh, I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi here sitting in the forest. Like, you're not doing shit, man. Like, I don't know. But not that there's not a time to go away into seclusion and everything, but it's just like, if you don't carry that enlightenment or that spirituality out into the world to make other people's lives better, then what is it besides your own gratification? There's a difference between protecting your peace and avoiding accountability, between being confident and being careless, between detachment and indifference. And we cross that line more easily than we think when we're constantly fed the message that you are all that matters. But you're not. None of us are. We exist in a web of people, histories, causes, injustices, and responsibilities. And that's not something to escape from. That's something to lean into, to honor, to care about. So yeah, grow, heal, meditate, reflect, set boundaries, but also care, listen, reflect on how your actions affect others. Be open to the idea that sometimes you were wrong, and that doesn't make you less empowered. It makes you real. It makes you human. Because being evolved isn't about how much you've detached. It's about how much you've connected. It's not about escaping the world. It's about helping to change it. And that's what real self-awareness looks like. Knowing where you end and where others begin. And how the way you move through this life leaves a trail behind you, whether you mean it to or not. Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. If you want to keep updated with future episodes, I'm on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Social media, Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff too. And that's about it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.